Yanji Jimbor Zurdan Yumi Jang Zoner Monum Jimbor Ngabjata, Tankar Tangam Zando, Shermando, Tomba Tuji Jana, Shamser Law, Nature was taking Jankan, Yaur Tuji Shan of Yalarman, Jigme Panzoja La Sura, Gorjutoban Power Shinjir Lo.
Today we are going to talk about His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's The Waterfall Melody, a sad song of impermanence. Today's teaching will not be like the previous 2 days, where I inserted structural outlines in the middle. It won't be like that. I will simply explain the text literally. Of course, this is quite easy. Anyone can understand it. But perhaps concerning the way some words are expressed, if I explain them in a little more detail, everyone will understand much better. Actually, the Waterfall Melody, a sad song of impermanence. I also translated it more than 10 years ago. At that time, I actually ended up using a sort of prose format for the translation. But when it comes to teaching, perhaps the prose format isn't very suitable for explanation either. Plus, when making some teaching notes later on, it wasn't very convenient either. So yesterday afternoon, I took another look at it in preparation for today, and my initial thought was that it should be perfectly fine. But as it turned out, upon closer examination, there were still some particular parts that seemed a little bit like that. You know, some words are probably better expressed in a poetic verse form once again. That might actually be a little bit better. So for today's discussion, I have also prepared a new retranslation. It is a piece titled A Sad Song of Impermanence, and the title reflects the idea that because all things are ultimately impermanent, this reality gives rise to a sense of sorrow. In this world, nothing lasts forever and remains unchanged. So you see, there is a kind of sadness, but this song of sorrow, when you listen to it, is actually quite beautiful, a lament. In every place in the world, there are both joyful songs and songs of sorrow. When we look at the material world and the world of sentient beings, they are all impermanent. There is nothing to truly rejoice over. But at the same time, it is expressed in the form of a song. It relies on using the lyrics to convey its meaning. And so its metaphorical name is the Waterfall Melody, the wonderful sound. We know that we can often hear the sound of waterfalls by the roadside. However, the sound of a waterfall, for those who truly love to travel, or for those who are a bit romantic in nature, when they hear the sound of a waterfall, they also find it to be an especially beautiful and wonderfully pleasing experience and feel deeply delighted by it. So on the surface, this seems like a very sad thing, but in reality, after you listen to it, you will find that it is actually quite interesting. Back when the precious Guru was still alive, in those days, there were often some Dharma friends who would very frequently sing, and when they sang in the presence of His Holiness, as they sang, it truly felt especially moving, very touching, just like that. When I first came to Larungar, I found this in His Holiness's writings at that time, and I immediately memorized it. It really resonated with me. Later in 1986, when I went to teach during the summer retreat, whenever there were some fellow villagers, I would try my best to share this sorrowful song with all of them. It seemed to really resonate with me. So today, I won't recite the Tibetan oral transmission. It's also fine to go through it in Chinese like this. Previously, just to be on the safe side, I would also recite the Tibetan oral transmission. But today, based on the specific content that we have carefully prepared for you, since I want to finish teaching this within these 2 days, I want to clarify that I won't be reading the text word for word. My approach instead will be to introduce each verse by summarizing its main ideas, and then follow that with a more detailed, literal explanation of its content. It is also important to note that the name of the first topic should be understood in this very same way. Now, let us begin with the very first verse. This first verse is in fact a verse of homage dedicated to the Master Mipham Rinpoche. So what this means for us is that because the great Mipham Rinpoche is, as a matter of fact, whether it is in emanation or it is in gathering, the principal deity of a mandala as vast as the ocean of clouds, we know that in Vajrayana Buddhism, also known as the Tantric tradition, there are an especially large number of principal meditational deities or yidams for the mandalas. As for mandalas, here it mainly refers to the Pure Land's world of forms and the world of sentient beings. For example, the Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss is also a mandala. There are peaceful ones and wrathful ones. All those who gather the mandalas of the principal deities, or for those who emanate them, such truly great benefactors possessing a wealth of incomparable merit, the great Master Mipham Rinpoche, the noble Dharma King, is prayed to and revered as His Holiness. Please, I humbly beseech you to abide on the beautiful lotus seat blossoming deep within my heart. In other words, Mifam Rinpoche, please dwell deep within my heart. I am beginning to sing a song of realization, and you bless me. We often say that the Guru's blessings merge into our own mind. This is a profound practice. It is a great realization, as His Holiness says. Now at this very moment, I am about to spontaneously sing such a truly profound doha of the Dharma path, a song of impermanence, a beautifully woven string of doha. This means one after another, like a string. Because the following content is not all presented in one single style. In fact, there are a variety of different ones. Some are about the world of forms, some about the world of sentient beings, and some about all phenomena. All sorts of teachings on impermanence. So His Holiness says, I request Mifam Rinpoche, please abide in the lotus of my heart and bless me. I will now begin to sing a song about the nature of impermanence. May all sentient beings who hear or see this song truly give rise to the understanding of impermanence in their mind stream. If the understanding of impermanence arises in our mind stream, then whatever Dharma we practice will be very easy. Didn't the Buddha also say this? Among all footprints, the elephant's footprint is best. Among all contemplations, the contemplation of the nature of impermanence is considered the most supreme of all contemplations. This statement should be understood as a verse of homage. In the following sections, we will explore the different ways to explain this. First, it is said that the flowers and plants of summer are also impermanent. This is because while they are for a time extremely vibrant and wonderfully colorful, showcasing a dazzling array of hues, this beautiful state is ultimately fleeting. When we enter those gardens, it can truly be said to be pleasing to the eye and heart. It's almost like being in a truly beautiful and heavenly realm. This is especially the case on the vast grasslands of Tibetan area during the summer. Or on the mountaintops, everywhere is completely covered with a magnificent variety of colorful flowers in full bloom. When they blanket the entire landscape, it genuinely and truly feels as if the heavenly realm has descended to the human world. This feeling is especially wonderful. As you are all aware, on the mountains completely surrounding Larungar as well, if you happen to go just about anywhere, you will find beautiful red, blue, and white flowers. All the many different kinds of flowers are so incredibly beautiful. When you sit there for a peaceful and while, it can definitely feel especially comfortable. For those of you living in the city, I don't know if you have ever felt this way. But for many of us who may have grown up in such an environment since childhood, the vast sea of flowers that blooms in summer is an especially beautiful and breathtaking sight. The feeling of being surrounded by all that natural beauty is truly wonderful, bringing a deep sense of tranquility. But this idyllic scene is temporary because when the cold winter winds and the biting frost arrive, at this moment the entire scene suddenly becomes even more desolate. As everyone is well aware, when the winter season comes, as a result, the vast area that surrounds Larung eventually becomes almost completely and utterly bare. There's really nothing, it all looks the same. In summer, this place is so beautiful. But now, in the depths of winter, especially here on the expansive grasslands, the season genuinely makes people feel a powerful and undeniable sense of renunciation. Furthermore, it often brings about a profoundly sad and melancholic feeling. This is something everyone knows as well. It's also mentioned in The Words of My Perfect Teacher that if the ground is covered with flowers and grass in summer, when winter comes, you could ride a horse for an entire day and you would still not find even a single flower. For instance, particularly here in the Tibetan region, the 4 distinct seasons of the year, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, are each exceptionally well defined and pronounced. This is in stark contrast to other regions, for example, if you look at places like Yunnan or Hainan. In those areas, the climate is much more consistent, creating a feeling that it is springtime all year round. There are places like that, but here in Tibetan area, when you see the beautiful scenery in summer and then winter comes, it naturally makes you feel a sense of sadness. When you look at the surroundings, it's like this. This is impermanence. In summer we have flowers, but when there are no flowers in winter, if you haven't contemplated impermanence, you won't feel anything about it. For those who've reflected on impermanence, they'll think, this place used to be beautiful, and now it's like this. You immediately feel something. Everything is truly impermanent, Lama Khyeno. This particular feeling arises quite spontaneously and naturally. Then the third verse of the poem focuses on the lively activities of the bees during the summer. The revered His Holiness skillfully uses the vivid examples of fresh blooming flowers and the tirelessly working bees, along with all sorts of other wonderfully beautiful scenes found throughout the natural world, to begin introducing us to the profound and truly essential principle of impermanence. The text goes on to say that the season of summer is also a time that is particularly vibrant and exceptionally colorful. The land is filled with all kinds of dazzling and vibrant gardens, and within them you can find many beautiful and industrious bees. It is as if they all rush to start singing their melodious songs. This has inspired many poets from our Tibetan region to capture this sight in their poems. For these creative individuals, the gentle buzzing of bees, the graceful dance of butterflies, and the serene formations of white clouds floating above are cherished and frequently chosen subjects for their poetic compositions. Actually, the sound of bees should be pleasant. The constant buzzing sound that fills the air is not just simple noise. In fact, it's remarkably similar to a unique form of natural singing. It's a complex and rich harmony, composed of a multitude of subtle and varied tones that blend together seamlessly. Moreover, these fascinating creatures are perpetually engaged in the delightful and essential task of enjoying the sweet nectar. This precious, life-giving liquid is held deep within the very heart of the blooming flowers. Although they may wish to, truly savor and appreciate such a beautiful and serene environment for a very long time to come, and live a life that is full of a wide variety of pleasures as well as happiness. But it's all due to the karma from their past lives. These particular bees, it is because of their accumulated past karma, can only enjoy it for the short 2 or 3 months of summer. When autumn comes, they have no choice but to leave. So it's clear that no one can ever stop the karma generated from past lives. When autumn arrives, especially towards the end of autumn, the vast majority of the bees are unable to survive the cold and will essentially freeze to death. This is particularly true when the first frost arrives, and the situation becomes even worse with heavy snowfall. Typically, by the time the first frost of the season arrives, many bees have already tragically perished among the flowers, and in fact, some of them have died in our own yard as well. By late autumn, you often see the bodies of bees. So at that moment, when you think about it, the flowers in summer were so beautiful, and the sound of bees was so pleasant. But now, unfortunately, the beautiful flowers have already fallen and withered, and the bees have died as well. Wow, everything in the world is impermanent. The experiences of joy and sorrow, the moments of meeting, and the times of parting in our human world are fundamentally the same. So it is natural to have this feeling, and this understanding is the third point. Furthermore, the fourth verse also makes mention of the melodious cuckoos in the forest during the warm summer season. The cuckoo is what we commonly call the cuckoo bird. Its call is known to be especially melodious, incredibly pleasant, and altogether beautiful. When you happen to hear it, some of you might not have really heard it before. It's quite possible this feeling is connected to the living habits you've had since childhood. I clearly remember the very first time we heard the cuckoo's call here, and wow, everyone was just so incredibly happy about it. This was especially true in the morning, right when you wake up, hearing that clear and distinct goody-goody sound, the iconic call of the cuckoo. Goo-goo. It's also called goo-goo. Attempting to replicate the cuckoo's call with a phrase like goody 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 doesn't quite work. The bird's actual song is far more distinctive and universally recognized. It's the famously clear 2-note cuckoo call, which is the source of the bird's name and is also celebrated as a herald of spring. This melodious sound echoes through woodlands with a simple yet beautiful resonance. It is a wonderful offering that brings a deep sense of joy and well-being to both body and mind. As a matter of fact, it really is a truly magnificent offering of sound. It is a truly beautiful offering of sound that people all over the world especially yearn for. But when the early autumn finally arrives, when the autumn season truly first begins to unfold, and if you pause to take a moment to genuinely and deeply contemplate this fundamental principle, then hasn't it, in actual fact, already become the very best spiritual teacher to reveal the nature of impermanence to you? Indeed, it really should be. We all certainly know that by the time we reach the last month of the 3 months of summer, in that very final month, you can hardly hear the cuckoo's distinctive call anymore. In the past, in Shakya's Dohas, Songs of Realization in Qinghai, the familiar sound of the cuckoo was often featured within the singing of these Dohas. In many of His Holiness's songs of realization as well, including those composed at Wutai Mountain, it is said that the cuckoo and I arrive together because it comes in the spring, and then the cuckoo continuously sings its wonderfully beautiful songs for everyone, while I continuously turn the wheel of Dharma for everyone. Now that autumn has come, the two of us will each return to where we belong, but next year the cuckoo may return again, while this old man may not necessarily come back, even if we do not meet again in this life. Well then, let us agree to meet in the Pure Land in our next life. At that time, His Holiness was most likely staying at Avalokiteshvara cave or some other similar place. When he eventually left Wutai Mountain in the year 1987, many people pleaded with His Holiness to stay and to properly teach them the profound Dharma. Then the great Dharma King graciously responded to them with a song, singing a poetic verse that was very much like the one mentioned here. Indeed, in the warmth of the summer, the cuckoo's call was considered very auspicious, as it is a very lucky bird. As long as you hear its call, anything you wish for can be accomplished. And it was also mentioned before that the first time in spring, if we happen to hear its call, whatever we are doing at that particular moment, it is said things related to that will continue for the whole year. This year, the cuckoo's call I heard was pretty good. It seemed to be on that particular day when I went out. Anyway, when one is performing some Buddhist rituals, it should generally be fine. Furthermore, as everyone can see for themselves, even if you don't want to think about impermanence, the cuckoo eventually stops calling and then it is simply gone. Other than that, there's not much feeling, right? In summer, it's there. Yes, it's there in summer. But in winter, it's gone. Right, it's gone. Now, you can't hear it anymore. Other than that, maybe people won't think about it more deeply. How is it impermanent? How is it impermanent in summer? How is it impermanent now? Actually, this is also a metaphor. For example, when a certain Lama is turning the wheel of Dharma, everyone in the audience might feel very happy and joyful. But once that moment is gone, impermanence has already appeared and made itself known. Sometimes I often hear recordings of some Lamas who have already passed away. When listening to tapes of some Lamas who have already passed away, at that time, when you hear this Lama giving a teaching, there are sounds of crows, magpies, and sparrows. Many sounds all around, and naturally a sense of sadness arises in your heart. Back then, at that moment, the scene was not only people listening, but even the birds were listening attentively too. But now, it appears that most of the people have probably left, and even the birds that were here have already flown away. This absence creates a very distinct kind of natural feeling in the atmosphere. So this particular feeling is being conveyed to us through the sound of the cuckoo. The sound of the cuckoo in summer reminds us of impermanence. Let it help everyone to contemplate the profound nature of impermanence. Next, we come to the 5th verse, which uses the summer rainbow as a metaphor to contemplate the nature of impermanence. So what is a summer rainbow? It is that beautiful arc of colors that appears in the sky under the specific conditions of a fine, misty rain, a gentle breeze, and the simultaneous presence of sunlight. When all these conditions come together, a magnificent and vibrant rainbow begins to appear. This stunning arc of color, nestled among the clouds, looks particularly breathtaking, a welcome sight during the spring season. Actually, it's true that rainbows frequently appear at the Academy as well. Usually when a rainbow appears, there's a certain kind of feeling that is incredibly difficult to put into words. Anyway, according to various great masters and ordinary people alike, rainbows are seen as extremely auspicious. Because sometimes when the Dharma is turned, or when the enlightened Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are born into this world, including at some stupas and various different types of stupas, rainbows often appear among these occasions. Rainbows of all colors, these rainbows are especially beautiful. However, soon after they make their appearance, they completely vanish without leaving any trace behind. Wow, that is a truly remarkable phenomenon. When you take out your phone to get ready to take a picture, and just like that, it is suddenly gone. That is simply the way rainbows are, after all. Even the very best things in life are like this. Observing this phenomenon reveals impermanence. We should observe the complete process of the arising and passing of rainbows. It's worth considering how they actually come into being, and then what are the specific factors that cause them to disappear. If we directly witness this for ourselves, in actual fact, this is without a doubt the most vivid and excellent teacher of impermanence. It should serve as a valuable guide for us. So in the future, when we see a rainbow, we might think, today's rainbow is so beautiful. Oh, there's a rainbow. Feeling nothing means you don't understand impermanence. When you see a rainbow, notice how especially beautiful it looks. It really is especially beautiful like that. But after a while, you can't even find a trace of it. Indeed, just now, the rainbow was very beautiful, but now it's gone. Whether it's worldly glory and immense wealth, a highly respected and good reputation, abundant riches, or anything else of that nature, when these things finally come to manifest, they genuinely appear exceptionally magnificent and beautiful. But when the conditions are not right, they all completely disappear without leaving even a single trace in practically no time at all. It's the same for everything. So the next time we see a rainbow, can we please always remember that this is genuinely and truly a wise teacher, demonstrating for us the fundamental impermanence of all things. It's not just for you to take a photo of it and then show it off to everyone. It is certainly fine to say, I saw a rainbow, but what does it truly and really signify? You see, all the wondrous things in this entire world are very much like rainbows, and in a way, just like dreams. Among the 10 classic metaphors for the concept of illusion, we often use rainbows, dreams, hallucinations, and magic tricks. These are truly some of the best examples of things that appear to our senses, but in fact have no real tangible substance. This is precisely why we so often use the rainbow as a metaphor. Now, as for the 6th verse, it uses autumn clouds to illustrate the concept of impermanence. To elaborate, in the autumn sky, we can observe clusters of white clouds that are not static. They gather together and then quickly disperse, constantly changing their form. Truly majestic, like towering snow-capped mountains rising one after another. Especially in the high plateaus of Tibetan area, those white clouds are particularly beautiful. However, their beauty is fleeting because they are very unstable. In just a moment, they can vanish without a trace from the vast sky. As you all know, in autumn, generally speaking, the weather can be quite changeable. Sometimes we use the clear blue sky as a powerful and fitting metaphor, and sometimes we use white clouds. Because the weather in autumn also changes rather quickly, though not as fast as in spring. Spring changes even faster. One moment it's raining, the next the sun comes out, then suddenly the wind blows. There are many such changes. It's just like we often say, your mood is as changeable as the weather in spring. As for autumn clouds, generally speaking, a person's individual wealth or their expected lifespan, in many Buddhist scriptures, autumn's white clouds are also used to better illustrate this. Consider these autumn clouds. If they disappear from the sky rather quickly, it presents an opportunity for us to reflect on the following. What does it actually mean? It teaches us as practitioners that all the happiness we may experience in this life is, in reality, quite unreliable. In this lifetime, regardless of whether you are wealthy and prosperous, or exceptionally talented and admired, or have a dignified appearance, all of these may seem to bring you temporary happiness, but just like autumn clouds, they completely disappear in a very short period of time. So when we have good health, we should also practice diligently ourselves. And when we possess wealth, we should also practice diligently. In general, everything we have right now is in fact inherently unstable. That is why autumn clouds are so often used as a metaphor. So we often see that it's not yet summer, but summer clouds can also be used in the contemplation. On the plateau, we often see blue skies and white clouds, and these white clouds appear one after another. Then think about it. After a while, that white cloud from before is nowhere to be found. At this moment, let us take some time to reflect. Here in our human world, all of these wonderful, magnificent, and highly desirable things that we often chase after are in reality fundamentally unstable and unreliable. It is a certainty that they will all disappear, often in what feels like a very short amount of time. Therefore, it is crucial for us to develop this kind of profound and firm understanding. Proceeding from this point, the 7th verse begins to discuss the subject of certain external dwellings. All of these are impermanent, right? The vast and solid 3,000-fold world in the end will be destroyed by 7 fires, 1 flood, and 1 wind. Everything will be completely destroyed, leaving nothing behind. This includes our Earth, astronomical objects, and the Milky Way galaxy. All of these things in our world are themselves just a small part of the vast and boundless systems of worlds that exist in the universe. They will ultimately be destroyed by various causes and conditions. In our world, when we went to the United States in 1993, at that time, their twin towers were considered to be extremely tall, over 100 stories high. At that time, they were, in fact, the tallest buildings in the entire world. But then later, unfortunately, when it was truly destroyed by terrorists, it only took a few seconds. But if you add up the total time it took for everything to be completely ruined, it was about 2 hours before everything was utterly destroyed. So in this world, I often think, when we build a scripture hall or a hotel, right now, they all seem very solid, made of things like bronze or concrete. While it is true that some concrete structures can indeed last for many hundreds of years, but in reality, when the inevitable effects of impermanence eventually arrive, all of these things will ultimately be destroyed without a trace. In this way, when we really consider it, even the homes we personally and painstakingly build, our own cabins, our private residences, and our cherished courtyards, what is truly and fundamentally solid about any of these places? In the end, there is absolutely nothing. Once you understand this, you realize they are definitely unreliable. The other day, an old monk in our monastery was telling them in the morning, I was just wondering, do you happen to think that my courtyard is a little bit crooked? Will it collapse? Do you have any plans to repair this courtyard? but by the afternoon he himself had already passed away. That's just how people are. He was thinking about the walls of his own cabin's courtyard, believing they might outlast his own life. But before the courtyard walls had even collapsed, he himself had already fallen. So sometimes this impermanence, including our monasteries, temples and shops, all of these buildings may seem very solid on the surface, but in the end, all the conditions that support them truly do not last for a particularly long time either. During our studies at Larangar, the classrooms where we had our lessons, we kept changing them again and again. Even the sturdiest ones and most solid ones would be replaced by another and then another. Now, what we once thought was solid isn't solid at all. All of these, you see, are actually very fragile and impermanent. They can change at any given moment. And so in this way, the entire trichiliocosm, the whole world, even the earth itself, will eventually explode. So if we think about the various structures that we have built for ourselves, for example, whether it's your classic wooden cabin or a more modern concrete cabin, or perhaps even a simple plank cabin, or if we look further back into the past, a traditional earth cabin, and in between there were cabins made of wood. Now, I don't even know what kind of cabins they are. They should be concrete cabins, right? But even those aren't solid. Your cabin is a concrete cabin, isn't it? So? It's really both concrete and wood. Wow, that is very impressive. Both concrete and wood. Originally, way back when we first started, everything we built was made of earth. We would have to dig up some earth and then stack them up. We would usually leave a little bit of space in the middle, and that was the window. We would then nail a simple plastic bag over it, and that would effectively be the window. Later on, these early structures eventually turned into plank cabins. Then they became wooden cabin, and much later on, they finally became concrete cabins. Some people were a bit wealthier and had both wood and concrete. Believe it or not, there are even glass cabins, right? However, we understand that none of these are genuinely reliable. Therefore, we shouldn't get overly attached to our own cabins either. There's really nothing worth being attached to. Nowadays, many people are focused on buying luxurious villas and all sorts of other material possessions. But as for myself, I can honestly say that I am not greedy for any of these things. This is true whether we are talking about a large house, a fancy car, or when it comes to anything external, even magnificent temples, for example. We do our very best to build them as well as we can, but the simple reality is that none of these things are ever truly reliable. So everyone shouldn't cling to the idea that this is truly mine. In fact, it's only yours for the time being. The owner will definitely change. Its owner is bound to change, and it itself will inevitably be destroyed as well. So what does this tell us? Am I being too broad here? I don't think so. Anyway, I haven't really prepared for this lecture. I'm just speaking simply and literally, saying whatever comes to mind. Next is the 8th verse, the long-lived gods. Actually, they won't die for countless eons, and their truly miraculous and potent powers are also kept under extremely precise control. They often enjoy the profound bliss that comes from deep meditation, using it as their form of sustenance. These specific kinds of exalted celestial beings and immortals, those very celestial lords and immortals who will not die for thousands or even tens of thousands of years in the end, what is it that they can never escape? It is the great enemy of death, the great enemy that is the god of death, so we can reflect on this ourselves. The thought that we won't die for the time being, such a notion is definitely deluded. It is unreliable. Look at the worldly lords and rulers of this world. Even though they live for such a long time, in the end they are inevitably destined to die. As for us, with such heavy karma and afflictions and with so many illnesses in our bodies, not to mention nowadays with all kinds of unhealthy junk food and of course the many various types of food poisoning, which are extremely, extremely common. Now, in an environment such as this, if you think, I won't die now, I won't die now, this is essentially a form of wishful thinking, and it's a complete delusion because there is no factual basis to support it whatsoever. For this reason, we ourselves often develop a much clearer sense of our own mortality. But we are not being overly pessimistic about this. It's not like that at all. However, it is truly and indeed very important that we are all well prepared for the moment of death. For instance, in the past, the Venerable Master Yingwang would often write the word death in his room. Last year, or the year before, one of our Dharma friends also wrote the word death and posted it in his room. Eventually, the management committee's work group discovered it here at Laranga, and they were very frightened, thinking this person was definitely going to commit suicide. They said this person is considered to be extremely dangerous. And you might ask, why? Because in his dormitory, they had found a very large character for death. They thought he might want to die and told us to pay attention to him. I said, this is a form of contemplation practice. It shouldn't be a big deal. But they still didn't understand this is also a kind of spiritual practice. Isn't it mentioned in Opening the Door to Mind training that there was a person who kept following a master? He sought a pith instruction, but the master long refused. Later, the master told him, you will die, and I will die. Practice this. He didn't understand. You will die, I will die, he thought. This isn't some special instruction. Everyone knows this. But later, relying on this teaching, he ultimately truly realized selflessness and attained accomplishment. Indeed, most people in the world basically think they won't die, it's always like this. But for us practitioners, I might die, it's just like that. It's rather contradictory, but in reality we will die. This isn't being pessimistic. It's not about avoidance, it should be about facing the truth. It's very good to prepare yourself for death in advance, because it is an inevitable reality that we are all bound to die. The specific time of our death is uncertain, and the wide range of potential causes for our death are unpredictable. So when death comes, ultimately, apart from the Dharma, there is absolutely nothing else that can genuinely provide help. Everything else is of no use. Everyone should be clear about this. Next is the 9th verse. It describes those who were once truly and extremely wealthy, who thoroughly enjoyed the abundant riches of the 4 great continents. These renowned wheel-turning kings should be the golden wheel-turning king, the silver wheel-turning king, the bronze wheel-turning king, and the iron wheel-turning king. For the 4 great wheel-turning kings, the golden wheel-turning king could enjoy the riches of all 4 great continents. But now, tragically, for all those people just like them, only their simple names are what remain in the end. Back then, their every command was answered, and they were truly remarkable. Nowadays, it's just, I'm the Milk King, or some so-called great wheel-turning king. Other than an empty title, in the end, there is truly nothing else left behind. If even these powerful wheel-turning kings eventually died, then what does that mean for us, with our own frail and mortal selves? If you think you won't die, that is just wishful thinking. That is just an illusion. That might seem to be impossible. Indeed, in our world, there are in fact many similar instances, including kings. Sometimes when I read history, I often reflect on impermanence, including when translating some historical records, the names of those people at the time. Many of them were once used by many people, but now no one uses them anymore. Back then, everyone was so attached to power. But now it has all just become words on a page, and some don't even have any written record at all. Take, for example, the history of the Han region. The Xia, Shang, Zhou, Qin, and Han dynasties, the 3 kingdoms, the Jin, the northern and southern dynasties, Tang, Song, Yuan, Ming, and Qing. So many kings, generals, emperors, and sovereigns, but now most of their names are gone too. When they were in a position of power back then, their level of prestige was genuinely and truly unimaginable, and this is something everyone should be aware of as well. So, when you think about these things, it really is the case that even the wheel-turning kings of the 4 great continents are impermanent, let alone insignificant people like us, with our frail bodies made up of the 5 aggregates. It's even more obvious. Impermanence is completely normal. Sometimes when we get sick, for example, if we have to undergo surgery or something of that nature, we can really and truly feel the impact ourselves. As for this wretched body of mine, whatever happens to it is fine. It doesn't matter. I'm pretty indifferent. No matter what they do. I never ask whether I'll get better or not, whether something will be removed or if it's being completely removed or what might happen in the future. I've never asked whether it's clean or not. It doesn't matter to me. After all, it's really just a little bit uncomfortable during the moments when it hurts, but other than that, I truly have absolutely no particular expectations for it. As long as I can practice a little Dharma and do some good deeds, other than that, knowing its true nature is enough. So many of us here today probably feel the exact same way. And our fragile bodies are indeed unreliable and ultimately meaningless. Now let us turn our attention to the 10th verse. It speaks of the Buddhas who have fully and completely penetrated and realized the ultimate truth of reality. For instance, Buddha Kashyapa, Buddha Shakyamuni, and the 7 Buddhas, and indeed so many countless other Buddhas as well, as numerous as the stars in the night sky. There are also countless Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. So many of them. When we studied the Great Sutra of Liberation, even the names of those Buddhas and Bodhisattvas were numerous. All of these have already appeared in the world and turned the wheel of Dharma. In the end, they all demonstrated impermanence and entered nirvana. Take Buddha Shakyamuni, for example. More than 2,500 years ago, the Buddha and his devoted followers were all so magnificent and truly powerful, right? But now, well, aside from the Buddha's name and his profound teachings of the Dharma, there is almost nothing left that endures. So, it follows that when we genuinely and truly understand these important analogies, the deep contemplation of impermanence will naturally arise from within us. This, of course, includes some of our spiritual teachers, some of our gurus from whom I have received teachings. That day, Khenpo Rigzin, the two of us just talked for nearly almost several hours. In the end, it was me all along talking. Because I had just recently had surgery, we kept talking and talking, since we hadn't seen each other for a long time. He'd say something, then I'd say something. My stomach was hurting so much, but we were still talking. While we were talking, this Lama had passed away. We had received teachings from him. That Lama had finally also passed away. That kind Dharma friend had also passed away. That one had also passed away. In the end, it felt like everyone from our world at that time had all left. We joked and said, now it's our turn. We're already in line, and we're at the very front now, because everyone ahead of us had already left. Now you see, it's our turn. We really and truly started to feel this way. He also had a particularly deep feeling about it, a very, very strong feeling indeed. And so did I most certainly did. Indeed, many of the old lamas from Larung at that time had all left one after another. The Dharma friends with whom we used to listen to teachings together back then, some died of illness, some died unexpectedly, and some passed away due to various other causes and conditions. Now, there are truly very, very few people remaining who are of our age group when we ask, who is this? Where is that person? Is that person still around? When you count it all up, there are essentially only a handful remaining. So our lifespan truly is impermanent if everyone develops a sense of impermanence in their hearts. It may be easier to give rise to faith in the Dharma. This is very important. The Dharma of our teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, truly is completely different from some other religions and from some worldly forms of knowledge. It is very different. The more I diligently study, the more profound faith I have in myself. There is not the slightest trace of wrong view or doubt, none at all. The same applies to all of you regarding these principles. If we look at it from the perspective of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, that's also acceptable. In fact, these principles are in the words of my perfect teacher. Everyone knows the theory, but we haven't truly contemplated it. When facing these situations, when we recite many of the Buddha's names, do we feel a sense of impermanence? Many bodhisattvas have now already manifested parinirvana. Many great spiritual teachers have manifested parinirvana. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok, Lama Achuk, Dinkor Khyentse Rinpoche, and Dudjom Rinpoche, Sogyal Rinpoche, and of course so many others. Now, among all of those that we know of, there are those who are especially remarkable, genuinely and profoundly respected great masters, have all gradually left this world. So what is this world like now that they are finally gone? If you think about it, these principles are very easy to understand. Once I said to a Khenpo, I really understand impermanence very well, but even though I understand it, it doesn't help. I don't know what to do about it. Anyway, impermanence is definitely something I understand clearly. And since I was young, I've always had a strong sense of impermanence. But when I look at some people, Buddhist monastics, they don't seem to have any sense of impermanence at all. The particular way they speak and act in many different respects, it seems like they don't have any sense of this at all, whatever they say. Honestly, this is actually quite problematic. As a practitioner, well, for ordinary people, we can understand it. It's understandable that they don't grasp impermanence, because the knowledge they've received is all about the idea of things being permanent and everlasting, always perfectly healthy, always completely happy, and that love is always beautiful. Ultimately, it's all just empty and deceptive talk. And people are quite naive too, thinking that things really will be forever healthy and forever happy, but that's not the case. In reality, it's not like that at all. You can shout those kinds of slogans if you want, but in fact, all phenomena are impermanent. Next, His Holiness also said the following: some impermanent phenomena of Sami. The sacred Pure Land, which is the uppermost hall of the great Sami monastery, located within this infinite palace at that particular time, the master, namely the great Guru Padmasambhava, the Bodhisattva, and the great King Trisong Detsen. And when the 25 great disciples all gathered together, it truly must have been especially wonderful. when Guru Padmasambhava and all of his disciples were at Samye Monastery, just thinking back to that time, how incredibly joyful it was, with hearts blossoming with happiness. Indeed, His Holiness often reminisced about the scenes of being before Guru Padmasambhava, which are recorded both in his spiritual dohas and biographies. He recalled this vividly over and over. But now, whenever he thinks of it, His Holiness feels a bit sad, remembering how Guru Padmasambhava was so incredibly kind to him when he was Dujam Vajra. But now His Holiness is alone, spreading the Dharma in Jambudvipa. He sometimes feels, as he has said, like an only child separated from his mother, completely alone in this vast, boundless world, feeling a profound sense of loneliness. He has spoken of this as well. We are the same way. Many of us once deeply enjoyed the profound Mahayana Dharma together with our gurus, living a particularly wonderful life in the sacred bond of teacher and disciple. But now, these revered gurus have already departed from this world and have ascended to their own pure realms. We are like a group of orphans with no one to rely upon, left behind in this world. It is very pessimistic and also very sad. This experience also serves as a reminder of the principle of impermanence. Now let us turn our attention to the 12th verse. Today we will cover 16 verses. What is the subject matter that the 12th verse is discussing? It discusses the impermanence of some monastics. If we do not properly listen and contemplate the teachings of the three purities, what are the three purities? Direct perception purity, inferential cognition purity, and scriptural authority purity. The three types of examination are purified. Through direct observation, no faults are found. Through inferential observation, no faults are found. Through scriptural observation, no faults can be found as well. Such extremely pure teachings, if not properly listened to and contemplated, then our mere conceptual thoughts and delusions cannot cut off the root of samsara. When you are young, if you do not listen and contemplate well, if the Dharma does not merge with your mind, then when you grow old, it's very likely you might return to lay life and get married, and end up as the father of 9 children. When this old monk dies, he will have drifted through life without any real meaning. This truly is impermanence. Among us monastics in general, some, when they are young, are very good at debate, composing treatises and all aspects of study. But in the end, their ultimate fate is to become a solitary and pitiable old monk, or should they return to secular lay life, they find themselves in a position where they cannot even guarantee their most basic livelihood. There are such cases. This too is impermanence. This even happens here in our Han monastic section. In the past, some people, when they were studying and contemplating here, were actually doing quite well. But because their study and contemplation at the time were not thorough, and they did not truly cut off doubt and the root of samsara, in the end, they too drifted about, finding themselves with no support at all, and did many pitiable things. This is something everyone should be aware of, and it's something you should really and truly understand. The next section is the 13th verse, which discusses the fundamental concept of the impermanence of some ritual masters. Strictly speaking, for us Nyingmapas, the most important actual practice is what is known as the 3 roots. Specifically, these are scripture, illusion, and mind. That is to say, scripture refers to the Guyagarbha Tantra, as well as the Mayajala, net of illusion, and the 18 Great Mother and Son Tantras of the Mind series. These are the specific teachings that we, as practitioners of the Nyingma school, are generally required to practice in considerable depth. But if some monks, or perhaps some other people, they do not truly focus on practicing these 3 essential teachings, and instead spend the entire day just blowing horns and playing music, constantly banging away on gongs and drums, and playing all manner of other instruments, and mistakenly regard this as a profound Dharma practice. Actually, at Larunga, we don't really. Many of them, I used to think when we recite a chod practice ritual here, everyone takes a big drum, and it makes a sound that goes bang, followed by dong, 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 which I am certain you all will find very enjoyable. I know that some of you have a special appreciation for blowing and drumming, but that detail isn't the most important aspect here. Actually, it has gained even greater popularity in countries abroad, including in Europe and places like that, where they solemnly recite some chod practice ritual and everyone drums together, dong, dong, dong. Actually, if you want to learn this, maybe while studying the 37 practices of a bodhisattva, if we wanted to learn, we could do it. It wouldn't be a problem. But again, this isn't the most important thing. To regard it as the most profound dharma, and to endlessly and insatiably enjoy offerings of faith and offerings from the deceased, in the end, when you die, you are going to experience a wide variety of signs of dissolution. For example, when the signs of the dissolution of the four elements in your physical body begin to manifest, then all of these things, the faults of not having practiced properly in your life, will all become completely apparent. So we need to listen, contemplate, and practice diligently. Of course, for a ritual master to recite sutras for others and use ritual instruments, there's nothing contradictory about that. It's reasonable. But there are some people who spend all day beating drums and gongs for others without properly listening, contemplating, and practicing themselves. This is also unreasonable. So when it comes to impermanence, you won't have any merit to speak of. Ritual masters recite sutras their whole lives. But in the end, even a single practice for rebirth, they haven't practiced properly. When death comes, it's also very frightening. At that time, they might clutch their chests with both hands and do all sorts of sorrowful things. The 14th verse, it should be noted, says, regarding the impermanence of some of the young monks. Young monks with truly broad wisdom, they originally yearn for the good reputation that comes with being highly skilled in both teaching and debate. A reputation for being an excellent speaker, or a reputation for being good at debate. They place great value on and cling tightly to these things. But His Holiness says this is nothing special. Even if you gain a good reputation in a short period of time, it is still very difficult to achieve. For example, if you were to eventually become a geshe, if you become a geshe in the gelug, by the time you have gray hair, you only obtain the geshe degree. Even if you obtain the geshe degree, or the Khenpo degree, or if you're very skilled in debate, the happiness that you experience in this life is simply not very long-lasting. So, it is for those exceptionally clever and highly eloquent young monks in the monastery, in reality, you should not be arrogant. You should not seek after these things. For example, if you think, I want to obtain a Khenpo degree, or a Khenmo degree, or I want to be very good at debate, if you think this way, you might not achieve it. And even if you do, it may not be beneficial. Because some geshes in the Gelug tradition, to fully complete all 5 great treatises, it would take 20 to 30 years. So by the time you actually receive the degree, your hair is already white with age. But now it seems things are not quite like that anymore. There have been some reforms. You don't necessarily have to be old and grey-haired. Things have changed. There are differences now. His Holiness means let go of fame and gain. It's not that easy if you want to obtain some academic degree either. Look at those who become geshes. They only achieve it after their hair turns white. How many years have you spent studying and contemplating? In such a short period of time, if you haven't obtained the title of Dharma teacher, I heard about someone who, a few years ago, did not successfully receive the Dharma teacher degree, cried for 3 days and 3 nights. But there is really no need to cry like that, because it's truly not such a big deal. Now let's move on to the 15th verse. I will be discussing just 2 more verses with you. These particular verses talk about monks who are monks in appearance only. They look down on the merits of the 3 trainings, discipline, concentration, and wisdom. Instead, they pursue things of this world, such as worldly fame, profit, and the 8 worldly concerns. Monks who chase after these things, or when you are dying, even though you have longed for these 8 worldly concerns, all those wishes will be gone and still unfinished. But rest assured, the laws of King Yama will absolutely never be postponed. Even if you have unfinished affairs that need proper handling, only after you've completed everything, let him know, and then have him come for you. He won't say that. When we humans die, so often in life many things are left unfinished, stopping abruptly right in the middle of them. That's why many of the great Kadampa Geshes would turn their bowls completely upside down at night, thinking to themselves, in all likelihood I won't be here tomorrow. Some people think this is really pointless. Why do you have to be so pessimistic, consistently turning the bowl upside down every night? What could possibly be the use of sleeping like that? But in reality, it does in fact happen this way. Sometimes we ourselves should think, what if I'm not here tomorrow? We should have this kind of awareness in our hearts. And if you have this awareness, you might actually practice. My life is very short. Maybe I really won't be here tomorrow. So today I should recite some scriptures sincerely. I should make good aspirations today. This might be the last time I make an aspiration. The last time I speak, often having this sense of impermanence, this is truly very important. Otherwise, these are simply monks in appearance only. Spend all day chasing after the 8 worldly concerns endlessly. In the end, the 8 worldly concerns are never finished. But you must understand, when your time eventually comes for King Yama, the Lord of the underworld, he will most certainly take you away. That is the fundamental point we must remember. Now let's proceed to the last verse for today. It talks about how elderly people should diligently practice the teachings on impermanence. Otherwise, you really do not have a great deal of time left, especially those of us sitting right up here in the very front who are already well into our 60s. Elderly people with their white hair and aging bodies are still planning for many more years of livelihood. You are truly like an oil lamp running out of its oil. Shouldn't you instead be preparing provisions for death? Some of you already have white hair, and your bodies are showing clear signs of old age. You elderly people might still be thinking in your hearts about how many more years you want to plan for. You think, in another 10 years, what will my house be like, and so on. Or, in another 5 years, this or that will happen. You keep making plans and strategies for your future. You still find the whole thing to be quite interesting. But in reality, you are already like a lamp whose oil has run out. If there is no oil left, what is the purpose of the lamp? So for many of us, especially those who are a little over 60, our whole bodies are already like withered trees. The fuel has now completely dried up, and as a result, the wick inside the lamp won't last for much longer either. This is a simple fact that anyone with even a little bit of understanding would know, who has studied Madhyamaka or Buddhist logic, will immediately realize that there's nothing to it. Some people talk about living to 100, saying you look younger, more dignified, that you look much younger than last year. Is that even possible? That's just self-deception. It's impossible. Some people say these things just to make others happy. You look even more dignified, younger, and more attractive. But is it possible to get older and better looking at the same time? Is there any chance? No, there isn't. So when it comes to what many elderly people say, indeed there are some elderly people, I think elderly people should sincerely recite these two sacred names, Om Mani Padme Hum and Amitabha. This is very important. Otherwise, if you think you will never die, you must realize that this is simply a delusion, a completely wrong point of view. Your life becomes like a lamp that is running out of oil. Therefore, it is essential that you should start preparing now while there is still time, in order to prepare some provisions for the journey through death, some essential supplies. You really should be ready for this. So what are these provisions? They are the practices we do now. For example, I recite the Vajrasattva mantra 400,000 times. In this way, perhaps all the negative karma from before today can be purified. If I die before the Sagadawa month next year, my negative karma will already be purified. For me, this is something that concerns all my future lives. This is very important. After I finish reciting the names of Amitabha and complete the 500,000 preliminary practices, if we truly put effort into our practice, then, just as the great master Phadampa Sangye once said, if we contemplate impermanence, at first we enter the Dharma. In the middle, it spurs us on in our practice, and in the end, we attain irreversibility. That's why, in the words of my perfect teacher, impermanence is also explained especially well. Many of the teachings on impermanence we've studied before. Many of our Dharma friends here, quite a few of you out there still, when it comes to impermanence, not only understand it theoretically, because anyone can grasp it in theory. Nowadays, many people have a high IQ, but the most crucial point is whether this principle can in fact be utilized in nearly every single aspect of our everyday lives. Whether it's concerning our friends or our family members around us, or even the roads we travel. All of these individual components are constantly changing, constantly being replaced. This is truly the best metaphor for the fundamental concept of impermanence, and this principle is still incredibly important to understand. These past few days, everyone has often been contemplating impermanence while meditating. Indeed, in this world, there really isn't anything worth being greedy for. Everything is impermanent. At this very same time, we should absolutely make up our minds that in the remaining years we have left, we ought to give rise to bodhicitta and commit fewer negative actions. We should often do things that benefit sentient beings. In this way, it will be very meaningful for both ourselves and others. All right, let's stop here for today.
Kirgana jirano chupai, jupun zonen droa droa
Bandangara Badna Asadorda Bandangara Badna Asadorda Bandangara Badna Asadorda